On the night before her wedding, Maya Johnson discovered the unthinkable, her own sister in bed with her fiancé. In a single moment, she lost her future, her family, and the illusion that love was safe. The dress she had chosen with the tears of joy became a costume for a ceremony that would never come. The flowers, the cake, the invitations, all transformed into symbols of betrayal, and when her sister confessed, claiming it was love, Maya's world shattered beyond recognition. But Maya did not disappear. She refused to remain broken. She left Atlanta behind, carrying only the ashes of her old life. 3 years later, she returned, not as the abandoned bride, but as the wife of Alexander Harrington, the most feared billionaire in New York. When the chandeliers of Atlanta's grandest ballroom reflected her silver gown, silence fell across the crowd. Jasmine froze, champagne trembling in her hand. Marcus turned pale, his voice caught in his throat. The woman they had destroyed now stood before them, untouchable. If you've ever known betrayal, you'll feel her pain. Stay with Maya and witness how she transforms heartbreak into her greatest triumph. 3 years earlier, Maya Johnson was surrounded by the fragile glow of joy. Her small Atlanta apartment looked more like a wedding boutique than a home. Ivory fabric lay draped over chairs. Boxes of cake samples crowded the kitchen counter. Vases of lilies filled the air with a sweet, heavy scent. And in the middle of it all stood her dress. White lace, shimmering silk, a dream stitched into fabric. She touched it with trembling fingers. To Maya, that dress was not just clothing. It was a promise, a symbol that her love for Marcus Reed would be sealed forever. Her phone buzzed on the table. A simple reminder from her maid of honor, Jasmine. "Don't forget the cake tasting tonight." Maya smiled. Her little sister was always eager to help, always by her side. She looked around the room. Every detail spoke of a future she had worked so hard for. Marcus came from the wealthy Reed family, a name spoken with respect in Atlanta. Maya, a designer with her own small firm, believed this marriage would unite two worlds, love and legacy. But even in that sweetness, shadows were gathering. Happiness, as Maya would soon learn, was heartbreak waiting to bloom. In the weeks that followed, Maya began to notice cracks in her perfect picture. Marcus was slipping away. He no longer answered her calls quickly. His excuses came easily, meetings with his father, endless obligations to the Reed family. Each time, Maya tried to silence the unease in her heart. "He's just stressed," she told herself. "The wedding is so close. This pressure is normal." But deep down, she felt it. Something had changed. His voice lacked warmth when he spoke her name. His eyes wandered when she spoke about flowers and music. At night, she lay awake in their apartment, clutching her pillow. She remembered how he used to hold her hand without being asked, how he used to laugh at her little jokes. Now his laughter seemed reserved for someone else, though she could not say who. Maya fought to hold on. She told herself love was stronger than nerves. She wanted to believe in the man she had chosen. Yet the silence between them was growing heavier, a wall neither of them named. And as the wedding day drew closer, Marcus drifted further, leaving Maya to whisper to herself in the dark, "It's just the pressure. It has to be." The truth arrived on an ordinary evening. Maya was folding swatches of fabric when her phone rang. Jasmine's name lit up the screen. She answered with a smile. "Hey, sis, did you decide on the cake flavor?" But the silence on the other end lasted too long. Then came her sister's voice, thin and trembling. "Maya, can we talk? Not here, not over the phone." Maya froze. "Is it Mom? Did something happen?" "No, Mom's fine. It's me. I need to tell you something." Her heart skipped. Dread crawled up her spine. "Tell me now," Maya whispered. "I can't. Please, can I come over?" The call ended, but the dread did not. Maya stood in her apartment, surrounded by the fragments of her dream. Flowers, invitations, the dress glowing softly under the lamplight. Yet the room felt suddenly foreign, like a stage set for a play she no longer believed in. Minutes dragged into eternity. Then the lock turned. Jasmine stepped inside, framed by the fading light. Her braids hung loose, her eyes rimmed red with guilt. Maya's chest tightened. In her sister's silence, she sensed a storm, and she braced herself for words that would break her world. Jasmine did not move from the doorway. She looked small, almost fragile, but her silence carried the weight of betrayal. Maya crossed her arms. "Say it." Tears spilled over Jasmine's lashes. Her voice cracked. "It's about Marcus." The name sliced through the air. Maya's breath caught. Her sister's face said everything before the words left her lips. It started months ago, after the engagement party. He was stressed, and I was there. It was a mistake, but we couldn't stop. Maya, we're in love." The room spun. Maya stepped back, steadying herself against the couch. The wedding dress brushed her palm, soft and cruel. Her voice came out flat, hollow. "You're what?" "I'm sorry," Jasmine sobbed. "He's sorry. We were going to tell you. I never meant to hurt you. You're my sister. I love you." Maya's calm shattered. Her scream ripped through the apartment. "Don't you dare say you love me, not when you've destroyed me." Jasmine flinched, fumbling for the doorknob. She fled into the night, leaving Maya standing among the ruins, lace, lilies, and a love that had died before it ever began. The silence broke with Maya's scream. "Don't you ever say you love me again!" Her voice cracked through the apartment like glass shattering. On the table sat a small white box of wedding cake samples. She grabbed it with shaking hands and hurled it against the wall. Chocolate and frosting smeared across the paint, dripping like a grotesque painting of rage. Jasmine flinched. Her sobs filled the room, high and broken. She stumbled backward, fumbling for the door. "I'm sorry! Please, Maya, Get out!" The command erupted from the depths of Maya's chest, fierce and final. Jasmine yanked the door open and fled down the hall, her footsteps echoing like a retreat. And then there was silence. Maya stood alone in the wreckage. The scent of lilies turned sour, choking her throat. Lace scraps and fabric swatches lay scattered at her feet. The dress loomed from its hanger, no longer a dream, but a cruel reminder. Her chest heaved, air refusing to fill her lungs. She staggered to the balcony door, pressing her palms to the glass. Outside, night had fallen over Atlanta. Inside, everything she believed in lay in pieces. The phone buzzed across the table. Marcus's name glowed on the screen. Maya stared at it, her pulse thundering. She answered without a word. "Maya, listen to me." His voice rushed, urgent. "I know Jasmine came to you. Just let me explain." Her throat burned. She whispered, low and dangerous, "Don't call me baby. Don't you dare." "Maya, please. It wasn't supposed to. You are dead to me, Marcus Reed." Her tone was calm now, colder than fury. "If you come near me, if you speak my name, I will burn every trace of you from my life. Do you understand?" Silence. He breathed hard on the other end, a man cornered. "I made a mistake," he said finally. "I still love—" She ended the call. Slowly, she set the phone back on the table. Her gaze fell on a framed photo of her and Jasmine as children, smiling with gap-toothed innocence. The sight twisted the knife deeper. Sister, fiancé, both gone in one night. She closed her eyes, letting the weight of finality press down. She had lost them both, but she had not lost herself. Not yet. The dress stared at her from across the room. White, flawless, cruel. Maya walked to it, hands trembling. She lifted it carefully, the silk cool against her skin. Once it had been her treasure. Now it was a ghost, mocking her hope. She stepped onto the balcony. Atlanta's humid night air pressed heavy on her face. The city buzzed below, alive and uncaring. For a moment she held the dress close, pressing her cheek to the lace as if to say goodbye. Then, without a word, she leaned over the railing and let it fall. The gown fluttered like a broken bird, tumbling into the alley 3 stories down. It landed in a puddle left by the afternoon rain, fabric soaking through, white turning gray. Maya's chest clenched. The future she dreamed of had drowned with that dress. She gripped the railing until her knuckles whitened. Tears stung, but did not fall. Not yet. The pain was too sharp, too raw for tears. Behind her, the apartment was silent. Before her, the city lights flickered. And below, her wedding dress lay ruined, a symbol of everything she had lost. Maya sank to the floor of her apartment. Her body shook, her breath ragged. At last, the tears came, slow at first, then heavy, unstoppable. She buried her face in her hands. Images flashed through her mind. Marcus smiling at her during their first date. Jasmine whispering secrets late at night when they were girls. All of it now ashes. Her sobs filled the room. No one came. No one knocked on the door. She was alone in her grief, abandoned by the 2 people she had trusted most. The lilies in their vases smelled too sweet, almost rotten. She pushed them off the table, petals scattering across the floor. Every detail of the wedding mocked her. Cake toppers, invitation cards, even the swatches of fabric she once adored. It was as if her apartment had become a museum of broken promises. Each object whispered, foolish, naive, betrayed. Maya curled against the couch, clutching a pillow to her chest. She felt small, stripped of everything. The city outside moved on, indifferent to her pain. For the first time in her life, Maya wondered if she had the strength to go on. Days blurred together. Maya barely ate, barely slept. Yet her phone would not stop buzzing. Marcus sent long messages, paragraphs of excuses. "I never meant for this to happen. You're stronger than me. I was weak. I'll always love you in some way." Each word sliced deeper. Then Jasmine. Her texts overflowed with guilt. "I'm sorry. I didn't plan it. You'll find someone better. You're amazing, Maya. Please forgive me." Every message was another wound. The sister she had protected. The man she had promised forever. Now they sent apologies that sounded like insults. Maya stared at the glowing screen. Her thumb hovered, then pressed block. Marcus's number vanished. Jasmine's too. Silence followed, heavy but necessary. She dropped the phone onto the table, almost relieved. But the damage was done. Their words lingered like poison. "You weren't enough. I was better." Maya closed her eyes, pressing her forehead to her knees. The world had turned against her. And yet, somewhere in the hollow of her chest, a faint spark remained. The kind that burns only after everything else has been reduced to ash. Alone in the silence, Maya's mind drifted backward. Memories she had buried began to surface with sharp clarity. She remembered being 7 years old, holding her favorite doll. Jasmine, only 5, had grabbed it and snapped its neck. Their grandmother had once praised the doll's hair. Jasmine could not stand it. At 15, Jasmine borrowed Maya's prized jacket, the one she had saved for months to buy. It was never returned, lost without apology. Later came the backhanded compliments. "It's amazing you're confident enough to wear your hair like that. I could never." Or, "Your little design business is so cute, almost like a real agency." Maya had always laughed it off, convincing herself it was sisterly teasing. But now, those fragments reassembled into something darker. Jasmine's betrayal with Marcus was not born overnight. It was the final act of a rivalry Maya never admitted existed. The realization twisted inside her. Jasmine had never wanted Marcus. She had wanted what Maya had. Always. The fiancé was just the most valuable trophy in a lifelong, silent competition. Maya closed her eyes. The betrayal was no longer a mystery. It was a pattern, one that stretched back to childhood shadows she had ignored. The decision came with brutal clarity. Atlanta was poisoned ground. Every street corner whispered Marcus's name. Every family dinner would be filled with pity and silence. She could not stay. Maya began to pack. She sold the unworn dress online for a fraction of its price. Listing it felt like selling a coffin. She folded invitations into trash bags. Her small design firm, once her pride, she shut down with vague emails about a family emergency. Her mother called through the locked door, pleading to talk. Maya could not answer. Her voice would have broken. At the airport, she clutched a single suitcase. Clothes without memories. Nothing tied to Marcus. Nothing tied to Jasmine. Just blank fabric and silence. The ticket was one way, Atlanta to New York. She watched the city vanish beneath the plane. Her reflection in the window looked hollow. The girl who had dreamed of forever was gone. In her place sat a woman armored in grief, already vowing never to trust again. Love was no longer a gift. It was a transaction, and she had paid too high a price. New York waited, harsh, indifferent, a place to disappear. The city roared around her, yet Maya felt invisible. Yellow cabs rushed past. Crowds filled the sidewalks. Laughter spilled from restaurants. But she moved through it like a ghost. Her Brooklyn walk-up was small and overpriced. The walls were bare, the air heavy with silence. She took freelance design jobs online, dull work that paid just enough for coffee and rent. Her wardrobe shifted, dark jeans, plain sweaters, boots that carried her without notice, makeup abandoned, jewelry tucked away. She shed her old self like skin. Nights stretched long. She stared at the ceiling, the hum of traffic outside a hollow lullaby. Inside her chest, anger lived as a quiet hum. Trust had become a foreign word. She did not go home. She ignored calls. Atlanta no longer existed for her. She had cut it from her map. Still, the city's endless noise offered one small mercy. In its chaos, no one asked questions. No one knew her story. She could dissolve into anonymity. But even in her self-imposed exile, Maya could not silence the ache. Betrayal was not easily erased. It lingered like a scar waiting to be touched. It was on a gray Thursday when her routine cracked. After a draining client meeting, Maya wandered into the Morgan Library, seeking quiet among old walls and older books. She stood before a Rembrandt etching, tracing the fine lines with her eyes, a face etched with sorrow, vulnerability captured in copper. She felt herself reflected there, raw, exposed. A voice broke the silence beside her, low, calm. "It's the vulnerability, isn't it? In the face. Most people miss it." Maya, startled, unused to being addressed. She turned. The man was tall, dressed in a charcoal overcoat. Sharp features, pale skin, eyes like winter sky. Severe, not handsome in a polished way, but commanding. He did not look at her. His gaze lingered on the etching. They see skill, technique, but they don't see the humanity. Finally, he turned those cold eyes on her. "You saw it?" Her throat tightened. She should have left, but something in his certainty held her still. He extended a hand, no smile, only fact. "Alexander Harrington." Maya hesitated, then shook it. "Maya." Her name sounded different in his voice, clipped, precise, important. Their paths should have parted. Instead, Alexander's words lingered. Days later, a heavy envelope arrived at her door, cream paper sealed in ink. She had listened to him in the library, speaking not like a suitor, but like a strategist. Now his proposal lay printed in black and white. A 2-year marriage, contractual, strict terms. Public appearances as his wife. Private independence preserved. At the end, a quiet divorce. In return, wealth beyond her imagining. A penthouse on Central Park West. Freedom secured by numbers with more zeros than she had ever seen. Her first instinct was to laugh, to burn it. But she didn't. Instead, she remembered his words. "You look like you have nothing left to lose." It was true. She had nothing left. The contract was absurd. And yet, it was honest. No lies, no promises of love, no betrayal wrapped in vows. Just an exchange, cold and clear. Maya stared at the papers for hours. In them, she saw not only escape, but power. For the first time since Atlanta, she felt the faint outline of control. And that, more than anything, tempted her hand. The contract sat on her kitchen table like a living thing. Maya circled it for hours, pouring coffee she never drank, staring until the words blurred. Was it madness? To bind herself to a stranger for money and appearances? To step willingly into a life built on rules instead of love? She closed her eyes and saw Marcus, his lips forming excuses, his hand on her sister's arm. Jasmine's tears, her triumph hidden inside them. The memory scorched her chest. Pain turned to fury. Fury turned to resolve. This was not about love anymore. It was about survival, about power, about never again giving someone the chance to destroy her. Her reflection in the window showed a hollow face, but behind the hollow, something sharper was forming. A woman who would not beg, a woman who would not lose. Maya pressed her palm to the table. Her heart pounded with fear, but also with something else, possibility. The choice was stark. Stay broken in the shadows, or step into a world where no one could touch her without permission. Her fingers brushed the pen. For the first time in months, she felt the faintest spark of control. The morning light slanted through the blinds. The contract waited, silent, heavy with consequence. Maya sat, pen poised above the first page. She could hear her own heartbeat. She thought of Atlanta, of a dress soaked in rain, of Marcus's pleading messages, of Jasmine's hollow apologies. Every betrayal had led her here. Her hand trembled. She steadied it, and then, with a single stroke, she signed her name. Maya Johnson. The letters inked onto the page like a declaration. The past ended. A new chapter began. It was not love she chose. It was wealth, security, armor, a life where no one could call her weak again. She set the pen down and exhaled. The silence after her signature felt different. Not empty, but charged. Her phone buzzed. A message from Alexander's assistant. "Welcome, Mrs. Harrington. We'll be in touch with next steps." Mrs. Harrington. The title was foreign, almost absurd. But it was hers now. She looked at her hands. They no longer felt like the hands of a victim. They belonged to someone stepping into a role, into power, into danger. The contract was signed. There was no turning back. A black car arrived at dawn. 2 men loaded her single suitcase into the trunk. Maya climbed inside without looking back. Hours later, she stood before the glass towers of Central Park West. The driver held open the door. She stepped out into another world. The penthouse was vast, walls of glass framing the city skyline. Marble floors gleamed under her shoes. Silence stretched in every corner, a silence expensive enough to feel heavy. Her old apartment had smelled of takeout and cheap candles. Here, the air itself felt cleaner, richer, as if money could be inhaled. She walked room to room, her footsteps echoing. Bedrooms larger than her entire Brooklyn flat. Closets waiting to be filled. A kitchen she knew she would never use. It was beautiful, yes, but it was soulless. A castle made of glass, waiting for its queen. Maya touched the cold surface of a window, looking down at the park. Children played, unaware of the battles adults fought in silence. This was her new life. Not chosen out of joy, but necessity. And still, it dazzled her. From ashes to glass towers. From nothing to wealth unimaginable. The next morning, the stylists arrived. An army of strangers carrying racks of clothing, boxes of shoes, cases of makeup. They circled her like artists before a canvas. One softened her natural curls until they shone. Another traced her cheekbones with careful hands, showing her angles she had never noticed. Fabrics draped over her shoulders. Crimson silk that clung to her frame. Midnight gowns studded with crystals. Tailored jackets that sharpened her silhouette. Every piece whispered not of allure, but of authority. She stood before the mirror. At first, she hardly recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the girl who cried over a ruined wedding. Gone was the sister betrayed. In her place stood someone new. Elegant. Untouchable. A figure built to command rooms, to silence whispers with a single glance. Maya exhaled slowly. This was not disguise. This was armor. For the first time since Atlanta, she felt tall again. Not because of heels or silk, but because of the steel forming in her spine. She turned from the mirror, no longer a ghost in plain sweaters. She was Mrs. Harrington now, and the world would learn her name. The night of their debut arrived. Maya stepped into the backseat of Alexander's car, the city lights flickering across her gown. He sat beside her, severe in his tuxedo, silent as ever. Only once did his eyes flick toward her, a faint acknowledgement of the transformation. At the gala entrance, cameras flashed like lightning. Voices murmured. "Who is she? Is that Harrington's wife?" Maya lifted her chin. Her hand rested lightly on Alexander's arm. His posture was rigid, practiced, but hers was natural. She moved with a grace that surprised even herself. Inside, the chandeliers glowed. The crowd parted. Faces turned. Some with curiosity, some with envy. Maya smiled politely, lips closed, eyes unreadable. It was a mask, yes, but behind it was strength. She had walked into this room once before as a dreamer, with Marcus at her side. That dream had ended in ashes. Tonight, she walked in not as a dreamer, but as a woman remade. The whispers grew louder. Alexander leaned down, voice low. "You're handling it well." Maya's reply was steady, almost calm. "I was made for this." Life in the penthouse soon found its rhythm. Alexander was distant, almost ghost-like. He left early, returned late. Their words were few, clipped exchanges about schedules and appearances. They were allies, not lovers. Two names bound by paper, two figures moving around each other like shadows. And yet, silence has a way of speaking. At dinners, he listened when she spoke, even if his eyes stayed on the glass of wine. In cars, she felt his gaze linger a fraction too long before turning back to the window. Maya told herself it meant nothing. She was here for survival, for power, for independence. Not for him, not for any man. But small things chipped at her walls. The way he stepped back so she could enter a room first. The way he shielded her from invasive questions with a single cold glance. It was not affection, not warmth, just respect. Or so she wanted to believe. Late at night, when she lay awake, she wondered if two people who had lost so much could remain only strangers. In silence, something unnamed had begun to stir. Maya studied Alexander in fragments. The headlines painted him as ruthless, a man who crushed rivals with numbers and strategy. Cold, untouchable. But up close, she saw the cracks. His eyes lingered on empty spaces, as if searching for something absent. He worked relentlessly, not out of greed but to keep demons at bay. He was not just a billionaire, he was a soldier of his own making, using wealth as armor, power as a shield. Once, at a charity event, she caught him watching a child struggling with speech. His expression softened, so briefly it almost disappeared, but she noticed. The man the world feared had moments of quiet humanity. She did not admire his fortune. She admired his discipline, his refusal to bow to weakness. It mirrored her own determination. Maya realized she was not the only one carrying invisible scars. Beneath the ice, Alexander was lonely. Not pitifully, but profoundly. The kind of lonely only another scarred soul could recognize. It unsettled her. It also drew her closer. One night, after a gala that left them both drained, they stood on the terrace. The city stretched endless before them, lights flickering like distant stars. Alexander poured whiskey, handed her a glass. His voice was low. "It's all a game, Maya. Everything. Business, society, even love." She took a sip, the burn sliding down her throat. "And what if you refuse to play?" His gaze stayed on the skyline. "Then you're played. There's no middle ground." The words hit her like cold truth. She thought of Marcus, of Jasmine. She had refused to see the game, and she had lost. Her chest tightened. "Maybe I don't want to play at all." He turned to her then, eyes sharp in the darkness. "Want has nothing to do with it. The choice is simple. Control the board, or be someone else's pawn." The city hummed below them. Maya stood silent, staring at him. For the first time, she felt not like his contracted partner, but like a student before a teacher. His philosophy was harsh, but it was real, and she knew it was the same law her own life had already taught her. With Alexander's resources, doors opened. He provided introductions without ceremony, as if it were part of her role. She seized them. Maya relaunched her design firm under a new name. A studio bathed in sunlight, walls clean and bare, waiting to be filled. No trace of Atlanta followed her here. Clients came cautiously at first, then steadily. A whisper passed through New York circles. Harrington's wife was more than a figure in couture. She had talent. Each project became a lifeline. Logos, campaigns, designs that carried her fingerprint, her reborn identity. Money from Alexander gave her freedom, but her work gave her purpose. At last, she felt the power of building something for herself, not for love, not for family, not for survival, but for her. The hum of betrayal still lived in her chest, but now it fueled her hands. She worked with precision, with fire. Maya was no longer hiding. She was creating again. And creation, more than wealth, was the truest revenge she could imagine. Time blurred into weeks. Their arrangement settled, efficient, predictable, yet small changes slipped through the cracks. Maya began to see Alexander differently. Not the ruthless man in headlines, not only the strategist on balconies, but someone who noticed her silence. Someone who offered space instead of demands. He never asked about Marcus or Jasmine. But when her hand trembled at the sight of lilies at a gala, he quietly removed the flowers from their table. No words, no questions, just action. She realized then his distance was not indifference. It was respect for wounds he recognized but never named. And she, in turn, began to lower her guard. Not fully, not dangerously, but enough to see the man beneath the armor, the billionaire, the ghost, the ally. Alexander Harrington was no longer just the man who bought her name. He was the one who saw her pain and did not turn away. And for Maya, that shifted everything. The envelope arrived on a silver tray, cream paper with elegant script. Eleanor, Alexander's assistant, placed it neatly on the table. Alexander slid it open, his eyes scanning the words. His jaw tightened, barely visible. He looked up at Maya. "The Atlanta Children's Hospital Gala," he said quietly. "Next month. They will be there." Her breath caught. Atlanta. The name itself was enough to unravel her. Images flooded back, Marcus's pale face, Jasmine's trembling voice, a dress lying ruined in a puddle. She gripped the edge of the chair. "No," she whispered. "Not there. Not ever." Alexander studied her in silence. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was steady. "It's a significant event. My company has supported it for years. My absence will be noted." Maya's hands trembled. She hated that he saw it, hated that the thought of returning could still undo her. She turned away, staring at the skyline. Behind her reflection in the glass, Atlanta's shadow loomed. Her voice cracked. "Send a donation. Find an excuse. But don't ask me to go back there." The invitation lay on the table, heavy as stone. She wished she had never seen it. The air between them grew sharp. Maya's chest burned with anger, fear, and something she refused to name. "I will not go back there," she shouted. Her voice shook the silence of the penthouse. Alexander did not flinch. He folded the invitation carefully, setting it down as though it were any ordinary letter. His calmness infuriated her. "You don't understand," she said, fists clenched. "That city destroyed me." Finally, he met her eyes. His tone was measured, unyielding. "You are not the woman who was destroyed. That version of you died the night you let go of the dress. Look at what you've built since. Look at who you are now." His words struck deeper than she wanted to admit. She turned away, crossing her arms, trying to protect the trembling inside. Alexander stepped closer, but not too close. "This is not about them. It's about you. You can run from the past, or you can walk into that room and let them see they never broke you." Maya swallowed hard. Part of her wanted to scream again. Another part heard the truth, and the truth terrified her more than Atlanta itself. That night, Maya stood alone before the mirror in her suite. The city lights glittered behind her, but her eyes fixed on her own reflection. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Strong shoulders, steady gaze, a face no longer soft with naivety but sharp with survival. The memory of Marcus's betrayal still cut deep. The echo of Jasmine's voice still scraped raw. Yet, standing here, she felt something stronger rising. Alexander's words replayed in her mind. "You are not the woman who was destroyed." She traced the line of her jaw, breathing slowly. He was right. That girl had died. This woman had rebuilt herself from ashes. For the first time, she did not see a victim in the glass. She saw a fighter. She saw a queen. Her lips parted. The words came softly at first, then firm. "All right, we'll go." Resolve settled in her chest, heavy but certain. Tomorrow, she would walk into the fire, not as the broken woman Atlanta once knew, but as the woman they would never forget. She lifted her chin. The decision was made. There was no turning back. The private jet cut across the clouds, quiet except for the hum of engines. Below, the world blurred into patchwork fields. Maya sat by the window, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her heart pounded with every mile closer to Atlanta. Beside her, Alexander read in silence, his posture relaxed. To anyone else, he looked detached. But his hand reached across the armrest, steady and sure. Maya hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, grounding. It was part performance, she told herself, a united front. Husband and wife arriving together. But the warmth of his thumb brushing her knuckles felt real. She closed her eyes, breathing through the fear. Atlanta waited like a battlefield. Jasmine. Marcus. Faces she thought she would never see again. The jet descended. The city skyline appeared, familiar and cruel. Maya's stomach clenched, but she did not pull away from Alexander's hand. For now, it was her anchor. The wheels touched down with a whisper. Maya opened her eyes. The war she never wanted was about to begin. The suite in Atlanta's Grand Hotel glowed with gold light. Gowns and jewels lay arranged across the bed like weapons awaiting battle. Maya stepped out of the dressing room in a gown of liquid silver. The fabric draped her frame like molten metal, catching every flicker of light. Diamonds shimmered at her ears and throat, each sparkle sharp as fire. Her hair was swept into a knot, exposing the graceful line of her neck. Her makeup was flawless, sculpted to reveal strength rather than softness. She turned toward the mirror. The reflection that stared back was not the girl Marcus left behind, not the sister Jasmine betrayed. This was a woman forged in loss, armored in wealth and will. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Alexander entered, fastening his cufflinks. His steps stilled when he saw her. "You look devastating," he said simply, his voice low. Maya did not smile. She only lifted her chin. Tonight, Atlanta would not see her broken. Tonight, they would see the queen she had become, and there would be no forgetting it. The doors of the ballroom opened, and silence rippled through the crowd. Chandeliers cast golden light, catching on the silver of Maya's gown as she stepped forward. She held Alexander's arm with practiced grace. His presence was steady, cold, commanding. But all eyes drifted to her. Whispers swelled. "Is that Harrington's wife? She's stunning. Where did she come from?" Maya's chin lifted. Her smile was faint, controlled, unreadable. Every step echoed like a declaration. For a moment, the orchestra seemed to play louder, as though the music itself bowed to her arrival. She did not rush. She did not falter. Each movement was deliberate, as if the room already belonged to her. At her side, Alexander's gaze never shifted, yet his posture made clear. This woman was not decoration. She was power, his equal in presence. By the time they reached the heart of the gala, the murmur had become awe. Maya felt it settle around her shoulders like a crown. She was no longer the forgotten sister, no longer the abandoned bride. She was Mrs. Harrington, and tonight the world knew it. Then she felt it. A piercing gaze across the room, sharp enough to chill her skin. She turned slightly, letting her eyes sweep the crowd. And there they were. Jasmine stood near the champagne fountain, glass in hand, her smile frozen in place. Her fingers trembled, liquid sloshing dangerously near the rim. The confident sparkle she once carried had vanished, leaving only shock. Beside her, Marcus was pale, his face drained of color. His jaw hung slightly open, as though he had been struck. His eyes traveled from the diamonds at Maya's throat to the gown flowing around her frame, and in his stare was not admiration, but regret. They did not move. They could not. The glittering ballroom blurred for them, reduced to a single vision. Maya alive, radiant, untouchable. Time slowed. The air between them thickened. Maya's heart pounded, but her expression did not falter. She had dreamed of this moment without daring to believe it would ever come. Now it was here, and the look on their faces was worth every scar she carried. Maya held Marcus's gaze for one steady breath. She let her eyes shift to Jasmine, who looked as though the floor might collapse beneath her. Then, with the smallest tilt of her head, Maya smiled. Not warmth, not forgiveness, just a cool, deliberate curve of her lips. The kind of smile that said, "I remember everything, and I have already won." Her heart thudded hard, but she did not let it show. Instead, she turned smoothly back to the conversation at her table, laughing lightly at a remark from a board member. She gave them nothing more. No words, no confrontation, only silence. It was silence sharper than any insult. Silence that reduced their existence to irrelevance. Marcus's chest rose sharply, as if the weight of his mistake had just crushed him. Jasmine's knuckles whitened around her glass. Maya lifted her champagne flute, sipping as though the room were hers alone. The victory was quiet but absolute. In that single smile, in that graceful turn away, she had reclaimed everything they tried to take. And they knew it. As the evening unfolded, attention shifted fully onto Maya. Guests leaned closer, eager to hear her voice. She spoke with ease, her words measured, intelligent. Conversations flowed, not about Alexander's empire, but about her insights, her design work, her sharp observations. People who had come expecting to admire the billionaire found themselves orbiting his wife instead. For the first time, Maya felt the balance tip. She was not the accessory. She was the center. Across the table, Alexander watched with quiet satisfaction. His pride was subtle but unmistakable. He did not interrupt, did not correct. He allowed her to command the space as though this had been the plan all along. Maya felt something stir within her. Power. Not borrowed, not given. Earned. The whispers grew. Who is she really? Where did she come from? How did Harrington find her? She gave no answers, only polite smiles. Mystery was its own crown, and tonight she wore it well. For the first time in years, she was not defined by loss. She was defined by presence, and the room could not look away. It was inevitable. Eventually, they crossed the room. Maya felt it before she saw it. The hush of voices at her back, the shift of bodies making space. She turned slowly. Jasmine and Marcus stood at the edge of her circle. Jasmine's smile was brittle, her eyes wide with panic hidden behind practiced charm. Marcus looked worse, his posture stiff, his throat working as if words were difficult. "Maya," Jasmine said, her tone falsely bright, "it really is you." Conversations around the table stopped. Forks lowered, glasses paused. Maya set down her flute with measured calm. She met Jasmine's gaze, then Marcus's. Neither spoke again. At last, Marcus cleared his throat. "Maya, is it truly you?" His voice cracked, the confident reed air reduced to a stammer. Maya tilted her head, expression soft but unreadable. The moment hung, tense, expectant. For the first time she faced them not as prey, but as equal. No, as their better. And in their awkwardness she found her strength confirmed. The silence stretched, heavy and expectant. Then Alexander rose from his seat. His movements were precise, deliberate, controlled. He extended a hand toward Marcus. "Alexander Harrington," he said evenly. "A pleasure." The name fell like thunder. Marcus's shoulders stiffened. His hand, once so confident at galas, now trembled slightly as he accepted the grip. The strength in Alexander's clasp made his own feel weak. Around them, the whispers grew louder. The Harrington name carried weight beyond Atlanta, beyond the Reed family's reach. Everyone in the room understood the balance of power had shifted. Marcus forced a nod, his lips moving but no words forming. His usual charm deserted him. Alexander released his hand and returned to his seat with calm detachment. He did not look at Marcus again. The dismissal was clear. Beside him, Maya lifted her glass, her posture regal. She did not need to speak. The introduction had already drawn the lines. Marcus was no longer her equal. He was a shadow fading in the presence of something greater, and he knew it. The tension thickened, unbearable. Jasmine shifted on her feet, searching for words. Her smile cracked under the weight of silence. Maya leaned back slightly, her expression serene. Then her voice broke through, soft and cool. "Congratulations to both of you. I must have missed the wedding announcement." The words were polite on the surface, but beneath them, steel glinted. Jasmine's smile faltered completely. Marcus's throat tightened. A flush crept across his pale face. Around them, a few guests stifled their reactions, eyes darting between the two couples. Maya sipped her wine slowly, as though nothing had been said. The gesture was effortless, dismissive, devastating. It was not a shout, not revenge screamed in anger. It was a blade wrapped in silk, delivered with grace. Jasmine lowered her gaze. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, unable to respond. Maya's lips curved in the faintest smile, not cruel, but certain. In that single remark she had turned their triumph into humiliation, and there was nothing they could say to take it back. The silence that followed was deafening. Jasmine's fingers tightened around her clutch until her knuckles whitened. Marcus avoided everyone's eyes, staring into the floor as though it could swallow him whole. They mumbled something, thanks perhaps, or apology, but their voices were too low, too broken. Then, without another word, they stepped back, retreating through the crowd. It was not the exit of victors. It was the retreat of the defeated. Guests exchanged glances, some pitying, most curious, but no one followed Jasmine and Marcus. No one offered comfort. Their glittering image, once polished and envied, cracked under the weight of Maya's presence. At the center of the room, Maya stood calm, radiant in silver, Alexander solid beside her. The contrast was undeniable. They were not the disgraced couple scrambling to keep composure. They were the ones people now admired, whispered about, respected. Maya exhaled slowly. The battle was over. She had not raised her voice. She had not begged. Yet she had won, and their quiet, graceless retreat was proof enough. The orchestra began a slow, sweeping melody. Alexander stood, extending his hand toward her. "Dance with me," he said softly. Maya hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. He guided her onto the floor, the crowd parting around them. They moved together, steps steady, seamless, as though they had always known this rhythm. The chandeliers sparkled above, casting light across their faces. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with something new, something dangerous, something tender. Alexander's hand rested firmly at her back. His gaze met hers, steady, unguarded. For once there was no contract between them, no strategy. Only two people who had carried pain, now sharing a single moment. Maya leaned closer, her cheek brushing his shoulder. The music swelled. Around them, the world blurred. Guests whispered. Jasmine and Marcus disappeared into shadows. None of it mattered. In that dance, Maya realized this was no longer about revenge, no longer about survival. This was about love. Real, fragile, terrifying love. And it was hers. When the music ended, Maya remained close, her hand still in Alexander's. For the first time in years, she felt whole. She had walked through betrayal, through ruin, through loneliness. She had found not only power and wealth, but a love that did not break her, a love that steadied her. Looking back, she saw the path clearly. The night she lost Marcus and Jasmine was the night she gained herself. Pain had forced her into fire, and from that fire she had risen stronger. Her story whispered one truth. Sometimes the cruelest betrayal opens the door to the brightest life. Maya lifted her chin, her smile calm, certain. She was no longer the woman they tried to destroy. She was more. And with Alexander at her side, she knew her journey had only begun. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you can join us for more journeys of resilience, power, and love. Because every ending can be the beginning of something greater.